So the goal is to talk a bit about 5 biggest mistakes in PM. So PM today for product management. Very important because it's often the same for project management. I don't know in which roles you are and what you're working in, if you're maybe a product manager yourself, or if you are in the field of, agile, you might have had a lot of contact already to product owners or project managers or product managers. And that's maybe the interesting part then for you to take away some of these challenges and mistakes what we see here. So let me get started with the first big mistake and challenge what we always conquer actually when we look into the field, which is from our perspective, the missing product strategy and vision. And here I mean the product vision, not the company vision. That's another topic that's unfortunately also often missing, but that's another meetup. Product vision. So if you never heard anything about product strategy and product vision, that might be a bit vague now for you. What does that mean? But I'll try to explain this to you now. If you're building a product, you're not just building it out of the blue. I mean, you can do it this way and hope to push it into the market with somewhat idea by learning, by doing. But it's always good to have a strategic frame in which you're building your product. That's where the product strategy comes in. And it's very important to understand, and let me sketch it a bit for you. You normally have, if you're looking into an organization, and let's sketch it quickly this way somehow, you're having a company vision. So the purpose, what the company is there for. And then you have derived out of this company vision, some sort of a company strategy. What does that mean? I just recently, after the fair, had a talk with the CEO around the biotech fair, what I mentioned before. And they outlined a very, very great company strategy for the next 5 years. These are strategic pillars and directions, what they want to tackle, what they want to look into, what they focus on in the next 5 years, for example. So this sets a frame in which the company is acting now. And following from this company strategy, we need now, as a next step, if you're designing and building products, a product strategy. And this product strategy is derived from our company strategy. And that's very important. If you come up, and that's unfortunately often the challenge, what we see, that product manager or POs or team members are missing this strategic link. So they're building something without actually really knowing what is contributing to, where's the link, where's the strategy. The bigger the organization gets, the harder it is to bring this strategy in and communicate it. That's just our experience. So if you have no product strategy, you will build something without any frame. And that makes it really difficult then also to see whether you're successful, to measure and see, are you on the right track or not, because you didn't outline where you want to go. And following from this strategy, which is an overarching direction. So for example, it could be that with all our products, we want to become cloud-driven. Could be a strategic direction, what we want to enhance. You have now underneath your product visions, depending on how many products you have, right? So here, maybe multiple products. And each of your product, and that's very important to understand, needs a product vision. A product vision clearly defines who uses this product, what this product solves, which problems, what the architecture of the product is on a higher level, and what the business outcomes are. And this is the flow, and that's one big mistake if you don't have this product strategy and product vision, because you're acting in a cosmos which has no frames. I just want to quickly outline for you, we have something called the product vision canvas, and in a nutshell, it's a very, very simplified tool now. I'm just quickly trying to sketch that for you, because on the product vision canvas, you have 4 areas which you need to look at. The first one, as I said, is the user of the product. So who is using your product? If it's, for example, an app for pizza delivery guys, you can define the persona and say, this is my primary user, my primary persona is the pizza delivery guy with this and that, maybe age, and he's coming on a bicycle. So because of that, your product might need to shape differently. That's why it's so important to understand your user. Then, as a next step, you need to understand the needs of this user and problems. Because that user has certain needs and problems you need to solve with your product. And without having this, you will solve something which he might not even have a pain in. And that's pretty bad, because then your product won't become successful, or it's more challenging to get it successful. So you need to really well understand the needs and problems of your users to build the product afterwards and continuously learn of that. So if you're a product manager, that's one of your biggest jobs, understanding user needs and transferring them into product initiatives. And then, as I said, the architecture. I don't mean here now the details and nitty bits, but we always like to split it in front end, back end, data sources. Like, very simple. If you're thinking about a digital product, for example, what are these three areas? What is happening where? How does it roughly look like? To just get a high-level architectural overview, because, and that's very important, if you have a bigger organization, you might have something called enterprise architect. If you don't have a bigger organization, you might have something called solution architects, or just architectural people which understand the technical depth. And that's where they come in then, where you need to understand, is it feasible what we have here in mind, or is it just completely out of the blue? So that's the other part, architecture. And last but not least, business objectives. And that's very important, especially when you're shaping a product now, and we are still in this mistake of missing strategy and vision. I mean, your product is there to achieve something for your business, normally to generate revenue or to create any specific outcome. I also have good examples in the open source field. Could also be a business objective to have an open source product for a bigger good, or whatever it is. But you have to have business objectives, what you want to achieve, and ideally they are measurable and understandable, so that you can later on track on them. So this is one first thing and one mistake which I'd recommend you to avoid when we're talking about product management. As a product manager, you need to have a clearly defined product strategy which comes from the company strategy, and then build up product visions for each product you have in your portfolio. Mark, do you want to add something on here? Are there any questions already on this, or can I
No questions in the chat, Roman. Thank you for that information. Cool.
Then I jump over to the next one. Mistake challenge number 2. It's a bit connected with the first thing, but it's a bit of a different angle to look at. The problem, what we always see is, one of the biggest mistake is, you or product managers tend to building features instead not solving problems. And that's a big mistake, problems. There's a term which I'd like to explain to you. It's called feature factory. Maybe you heard about that already. Feature factory. What does that mean? It's the continuous production of a new feature in your product. It's always easy to imagine if you have a digital product, maybe the app gets a new release with a new functionality. Maybe you can scan something now through your phone app, whatever it is, any new feature, any new functionality. And the thing is, often we see is that instead of focusing on actual user needs, which is this area here, right, which I marked here before, this area, because we don't have this vision, or because we don't know our user well enough, or we didn't understand the needs in the market, we're just building features and pushing them out in the market. Or other way around, because only one user or very minor set of users has a certain need, we're building this feature anyway, but it doesn't contribute to the bigger picture of our product, what we want to achieve with it. So that's something where you then end up in a feature factory. What does that mean? Basically, a new request is coming in, new request from the user or from the business, or from, sorry, I'm not writing nice here, from the business is coming in, and we just listen to it, put it on the backlog, and with the backlog, we just build the feature, build, and then ship it. Without questioning, does this fit to our product strategy at all? Does this fit to our product vision? Is this contributing to business objectives which we outlined? Why do we do this feature at all? Or why do we have this idea at all. And then you shouldn't look on the word or term feature. You should focus on, are we solving with this a special need of our user or a special problem? And the funny thing is, often you will come to the point, no, you won't solve anything with it. And then you can actually put it aside, this feature. So that's one big mistake what we see when it comes to the development of new things. And management, unfortunately, tends to, measure teams and track teams on the release of new features, on the speed of new features, on the amount of new features. But that's, from my perspective, the wrong metric. You rather need to look on the impact what your product has at the end. Did we achieve, for example, our business objectives, which we outlined here? And that's not necessarily done with many features. That's done with the right features for the right needs to solve the problems of the user. Very important thing and mistake to avoid. No questions, Mark. I'm rushing through here. All good. I'm just looking into the chat as well. No, looks all good. Okay. Then another mistake which I want to point out today, what we should avoid when it comes to product management and all around this. When we talk about, let me write the mistake first, missing prioritization. When we talk about requests, user needs, business needs, whatever it is, at the beginning, all needs to come together and needs to be some way prioritized. And it sounds so simple, but unfortunately, we don't see it often done at all, prioritization. It's more based on, gut. It's more based on who screams the loudest. It's more based on management says we need to do this now, instead of actually focus on what the product would need or what the user would need. And this is a big problem. Let me sketch you something, and I will use this later again. If we think discovery, delivery, if we think in these three operations stages of a product, you will always end up with these three areas. Something is happening in the discovery phase. That's where product management is also home. Product management. That's the market, that's the user needs, that's understanding business. This is business objectives, bringing this together with the user needs, and formulate out of this initiatives which need to be then delivered in the delivery part. So here we have product owners collaborating together with product management to understand what does the market need, and then going into delivery to deliver it the best way they can. And later on, we hand it over into operations, where we need to operate the product in the market and run the product in the market. So when it comes now to prioritization, we have actually various layers of prioritization. So there's a prioritization already happening here as a first stage in the discovery. That's the more market-driven perspective. That's the strategic perspective. That's the perspective of business value versus user needs. And then we have another one where we have here in the delivery also a prioritization. It's even more granular. We are more on a backlog and roadmap level, where we prioritize based on feasibility, based also on capacity. And this brings it together. And this is important to understand, because now product management and product owner need to be very much aligned. Otherwise, things will be very asynchronous. And you could even go further into operations and say, also here, we need some sort of prioritization, because if in product management, right at the beginning in the discovery, we come up with things which are not operatable later on in the market, it would be very tricky. I give an example from one of our clients. They're operating, let's say, I'm trying to just ship around the NDA. They're operating a big IoT fleet of devices. So Internet of Things fleet of devices. We're talking here about millions of devices, okay, in the market, really around the globe. And now if a new feature request comes in, a new problem, what we need to solve from the market, we need to think already here in the discovery about, well, one way is we can prioritize purely about business objectives, or purely about user needs, or purely about money. Does it bring money at all or not? Or purely about technical feasibility. But one thing what you need to take also in consideration here is now, is it later running in operations at all? Because we have such a massive fleet in the whole globe running. If we release this later on, will that be feasible? Will that be feasible at all? So we need already here, right at the beginning, operations to make a prioritization, and maybe even what prioritization is all about, say no to it, right? And that's very important to understand. So you think there in various layers of prioritization. Just as one hint, maybe if you're struggling with prioritization, there are tons of different frameworks, and it's always very, very tricky to say how do we prioritize. But what is a very, very simple method, and I mean, you could do another meetup around this only. If you put yourself just a normal graph and you put here on the x-axis the value of what you're trying, and here you can put the effort. So how complex is it to achieve? And that's very vague, I know, but that's a very good first starting point to look at. Because if you say you have something which has a very high value, either value, let's create this a bit more clear, value for the user / business from both perspectives, business. So if it has a high value for the user and for the business, and a low effort to implement or later to operate, I mean, that should be your number one focus, right? You want to create high value things with low effort. That's pretty cool. And then you could argue as a next step and say, okay, things which low value and low effort, that would be probably your last things you want to do, or even ideally, you completely don't do them at all because they just bring zero value nearly and cost a lot of effort. Sorry, I sketched in the wrong paragraph here. I wanted to, and that's really important to understand because you don't want to build with a lot of effort not valuable things, right? And here, I mean, sometimes you're ending up with doing stuff in there which you cannot avoid. Regulatory things, for example, if you have compliance topics which you need to fulfill, especially in the biotech area. I remember one of our clients building a medical product, an app for the phone. They needed to do some things which were not so valuable for the business, neither for the user, but there were just compliance things which you need to tackle. And that's effort to go through it, but you need it for a certain stage to go further. And this is one very simple way to prioritize. If you're using Jira, for example, Jira or Atlassian as a product manager, you should have a look into Jira Product Discovery. Product Discovery. I don't know if you heard about it. Discovery. Here we go. That's a product from Atlassian, which is ideal for product management from my perspective, because you can build up all the metrics, what I just showed you here, all your prioritization. You can, even calculate your ideas and come up with some sort of good way to prioritize things. At the end of the day, from my perspective, product management needs to achieve in some sort of way to put a price tag on what does it cost it to do and what does it bring it to do, business case, right? And that might be not always so easy, but that's at the end a very important metric as well, where you decide on doing stuff or not doing stuff. So just keep that in mind. Missing prioritization is a problem when we talk about product management. Mark, I'm just having a sip of water, so in case you have to say something, feel free.
Thank you, Roman, for the information. I shared also the link to our YouTube channel 2 times in the chat for everybody who wants to have a look afterwards on the video. We will post it on Monday, I guess, on our YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And the video from the last meetup was around the topic AI, how to use that in project and product management. What is the latest current state there? And you can find it also on our YouTube channel. Here's a question in the chat from Rishi Raj. Who takes care of operations?
You mean this role here? Oh, thanks for asking this. Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Rishi.
So depends a bit on how you name that role. There's something, often what we see is service owner, or operations manager. It's a bit tricky because every company calls that role a bit differently. But ultimately, what is that person responsible for? Not for new features, not for finding new user needs, but for orchestrating and managing the existing product in the market to guarantee the highest possible uptime of the product, meaning a healthy product. Ideally, you never hear and see anything about an operations person, because then everything is running smooth. That's the ideal world. And especially, I think, in B2B context, this is quite interesting when you're talking about IoT products as a fleet, for example. I have another example in mind with trucks, where IoT products are built into trucks, and that's a fleet which needs to be orchestrated. So we need to upgrade, we need to patch them, we need to disaster recover things, and all these things. And that's all under operations, making sure it's running a healthy system. And that goes also smaller, right? I mean, if you have apps and which have thousands of users, you also need to take care that the things are running smoothly. I hope that answered the question, Mark.
Cool, Roman. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. I promised you 5 mistakes, and probably I could paint more and more, but let me go further. And I just scroll down directly on the next page. I think that's better. All right. 4. What I want to point out now here is that not aligned roles and working model. Let me explain it to you. So there's a big confusion about the product manager. Then we have the product owner as another role, which is important to understand. Then we have often some sort of scrum master or a facilitator, however you want to call that person, facilitator. And then maybe even team leads and so on. I could paint more roles here, but what I want to focus on is especially product management and product owner, because I think it's very important to understand who's responsible for what, because if these roles are not aligned or understood, it's really hard to see who is responsible and to actually achieve also efficient product building. So as said before, product management is, from our perspective, responsible all around discovery. So we are talking about finding user needs, understanding the market, aligning it with the company strategy, deriving the product strategy, building the product vision. These are all things which you could put underneath here, from product strategy to product visions to market needs, market and user needs, market plus user needs, and then obviously as well the business objectives to track them and to also build the product accordingly to what wants to be achieved. Now, what's important is we have, on the other hand, the delivery, we have the product owner. And now what we always see or often see is that there's a quite huge detach between these two roles. And I think that's very wrong, because a product will become very successful if you bring these two roles together, if they work hand in hand. And from our perspective, something in between is needed to link them. And we always see the tool of a roadmap in between as the linking factor. A product roadmap is, from our perspective, the way how product management can communicate user needs, which are on the product roadmap, and product owner can understand what is needed from the market and derive their needed implementation tasks, epics, and what so on is happening there. Because a product roadmap is not as often seen a static document, you put it there and you put it in a box and that's it. It's for mainly a strategic communication tool between roles, and to understand what the market needs, what the user needs, and how we then can build successfully things to achieve that. So if you wanna look on what the product owner is actually responsible, you can go in here and say, okay, we have now the product backlog. So all the things that need to be done in terms of achieving and building the right product. So maximizing the value of the product. Then we have here the rituals like sprint planning. If you're working in a more agile setup, sprint planning, maybe a demo, a review with the stakeholders, and so on. So it's all around facilitation of the delivery and making sure we're delivering the right thing with our outlined things. As a product owner, you also have quite a tough job because you're pushing. Mark, you know that very well, right? You often take this role in client projects. You're a good product owner. I'm not such a good product owner. I'm more the product management side. But it can be a very challenging task and job because you have still, as a next role, the developers, which are the expert on how to do it the best way, right? So on a product owner, we're looking at what needs to be done. This is the thing that needs to be defined. And if you look into the developers, then and the team members, they know the best way how it's done. Yeah, Mark, I don't know what your experience is as a product owner, but sometimes challenging, I guess.
Of course, yes. But I like it much more to push a bit in the team and get the product delivered with the value we we tried always to maximize the value for the customers and the company. And I like it a lot. Matthew is writing something in the chat, I guess, and maybe
Cool.
he has a question. That would be cool. And I can read it out loud. And feel free, guys, if you have any questions, write it in the chat, please. Then Roman can answer them.
Yeah.
And thank you. Cool, Roman.
So that's one part, the roles. And the other thing, what I said before, working model. And working model is a big word. I mean, this includes tools and so on. But what I want to look at here, especially, is rituals again and rhythm. Because normally what we sketch, and I'm not sketching now all the details, but we normally think in these 3 layers. And let me quickly sketch them on a high level for you. We have something, the first layer we call portfolio. Then we have the program, and then we have the team layer. So here in the teams, we are working in some sort of delivery way, whether it's sprinting or Kanban oriented, depends on what is needed, right? The portfolio is the more long-term perspective. That's the strategy of our product, where we're heading. And now it's important to understand how to bring these 2 layers together with product management, which is more up here, and product ownership, which is more down here. And we do that with a very clearly defined ritual every quarter. So we just called it quarterly planning. And imagine now from this dot to this dot, it's quarter 1, and then maybe later on you have quarter 2, and so on. You get the idea, right? Quarter 3. So every quarter we bring the POs together with the relevant product managers in a quarterly planning. It's normally at the end of a quarter to go into the next quarter. So we have a quarterly planning meeting. And in this meeting, we're bringing in from the product management side updates on product strategy, updates on product vision if things happened, new directions, new needs from the market, new user needs. And from the PO side, we bring in the understanding of technical feasibility, the needs, where we're currently standing, what did we deliver, where are we? And then from this, we derive in the quarterly planning meeting the epics and outline them together with product management for the whole next quarter. What does that bring us? We know clearly now for the next quarter what are the priorities and the strategy. Based on the strategy we need to focus on. And then with these epics, we can go here into our sprint plannings, which are happening regularly, sprint plannings, and build tasks and topics according to the epics we outlined with the bigger strategy together with product management. And that's one big thing. If you try to sync in some sort of way on rituals, try to bring in a quarterly planning meeting where you bring product management and product owners together. Also to align on dependencies between product owners. If you have multiple products, helps a lot to just bring the people together and plan this ahead. This quarterly planning meeting is quite some effort. It takes some time. It's not only an hour. Normally It's easily half a day, often even a day, but it's extremely valuable because everybody is set again with a clear picture for the next quarter. So in terms of speaking in mistakes, not aligned roles and working models / rituals, try to clearly make the difference between PO and PM, but let them work together, sync them, and then based on this, ideally come up with some sort of ritual, quarterly planning, where you bring all together to plan ahead. We see that companies don't have, or sometimes have the wrong, or don't have at all, success criteria / metrics on how to determine if our products are successful or if they're not successful. And that comes back to the product vision, what we had at the beginning as well. If I outline business objectives, I also need to somehow make it measurable, make it clear if it's at the end a successful product release, if it's a good thing for the company, if it's a good thing for the user or not. And what we realized at the end is that you can maybe think in 3 areas if you're coming up with success criteria. One is the part of people. I'll explain in a second. Then the other part is the product itself. And then the third part is the business. So in each of these parts, you might need some success criteria, and not 20 and not 30, but rather the right ones, but a handful of them. So people is not related necessarily to the user, but related to your team, to your developers, to your product owner, whomever it is, to understand, are we as team, for example, efficient enough? Are we satisfied with what we're doing? Are we delivering the right value to the user? You can look up things like team health, what we like to use here. That's, for example, not a very quantitative metric, but it very good shows you after every iteration or after every quarter, depending a bit on how you structured your health in the team and your development of the team, whether we as a team feel on the right track or we don't. And it often helped us already to understand if we see team health declining. We saw also changes, for example, in the strategy or missing strategy problems, which helped us then to understand, okay, here's something going on. We can take that, for example, into the retrospective and then improve with this to understand how we proceed. Then product, depending a lot on what your product is, you have various and tons of different KPIs, metrics, success criteria is what you can do. You can, for example, come up with the Net Promoter Score to see would somebody else recommend your product to use. Very simple thing. Depending really on the product, if it's a digital product, if it's a physical product, all these things, just you need some sort of metric around your product to determine is the user satisfied? Customer satisfaction could be another one. Customer satisfaction. Is the product itself healthy? So if you're developing code, you can also look into this and understand how is our code, how is our product architecture, is it a healthy one? And these are things around the product which you can come up with as a success criteria to understand, are we successful? Are we on the right track or not? And last but not least, business sides, right? And these links very much to the objectives I mentioned before. There's either growth in terms of revenue, for example. There can also be other business objectives going, as said, for example, into open sourcing. Could also be a very, very hard metric, yes or no metric even. Various things around business to see whether we are successful with what we're building or not. What we like to do is that we bring these metrics also on a quarterly base in. So if you have the quarterly planning or review meeting, what we mentioned before, that's very great because you can have a quick check-in on this and see how are we developing. Are we going in this direction? Are we in the wrong direction? Or are we declining? Are we decreasing? And the thing is, if you don't have any success criteria, it will be very hard to determine, are we on the right track? It's very much based on gut feel. It's based on market needs up and down. and it just gives you a very hard way to steer your direction, and no feedback and no clear guidelines on it. That's why some sort of criterias are very helpful in terms of building your products.